Good morning everyone, it's Lance here for Best Day Ever Mountain Biking, and today we're going to trial another e-bike. This is the Focus Sam2. Alright, so here it is, the Focus Sam2. This is actually a rental bike, but I've been quite keen to check this bike out, so I've just rented it for the day and see what I think of it. This one is running a Shimano motor. I've not ridden a bike with Shimano motor, I don't think, so I'm interested to see how that runs. It's got a 375 watt hour battery in it. And you can get a second 375 watt battery, which I've got. It looks very ugly with a second battery on, but we're going to try that later and see what it, if you want to do a longer run. But I'll be interested to see how far we can go on just the battery inside the frame. 27.5 wheels. I was hoping for a 29er, but we'll see what the 27.5's like. Got a KS dropper post, RockShox rear shock, and RockShox Yari forks. It's got Magura brakes, which again, not familiar with those, but I'm interested to see how they go. One bit that's a little bit different about this bike is it has the actually has a 9-speed box component drivetrain, which doesn't come standard with the bike. This is a modification, but I'll be again interested to see how that goes. So anyway, let's go take it out for a spin and let's see what we think of it. Alright, so we're doing a track called Paddy's Run. We started off riding up the road in eco, which was actually quite pleasant, but now we're in trail mode, which I prefer even when going down. Sometimes I'd even ride in boost going down, but alright, first impressions of this bike, really like it. 170 mils of travel, geometry is really good, feels very comfortable. I feel as I'm pretty much as fast as I would be riding down here on my normal bike. So yeah, so far really like the bike. I'm quite keen to buy one, so yeah, want to give it a good test ride and see if the bike's for me. Oh, it's so nice, eh? Bit of climbing, no trouble at all. Oh shit, it's not a good thing. Unfortunately, the drivetrain was slipping. Interestingly enough, on a normal bike, when you wear out the cassette, you often wear out the big cogs when you're pushing with a lot of power to climb hills. In an e-bike with all that motor-assisted power, you end up wearing out some of the middle to smaller gears. So yeah, it was slipping a bit, this drivetrain. I do like the idea of a 9-speed gearbox, and it would have been great to test that out more, but unfortunately I had to sort of be a little bit careful because I couldn't really put the power down in some gears, so that did spoil the ride for me just a little. Okay, we're into frontal lobotomy. This is an uphill trail. On the e-bike, the Focus climbed really well. Looking down at the speedo, we were doing about 12 to 20 kilometers an hour uphill, so that was really good fun. If you listen to the motor, it does make a little bit of a noise, but to be honest, it didn't bother me at all. Certainly with my helmet on, I thought it was fairly quiet, so certainly the noise of the bike was not really an issue for me at all. Well, I made it to the highest point in Rotorua. I'm going to go down Rotorua. Rained really heavy overnight, so a bit of wet bush should be interesting to test the bike out on. That must be the most enjoyable ride I've ever done to this point. Normally I get to here and I lie on the bench for half an hour and just wish I was dead. But today it feels great, so that's good. The downside is I've used, I think, about half of the battery, which is slightly concerning. But anyway, we'll see how it goes for the rest of the day. Alright, so we're into the wet, slippery native bush, but to be honest, it wasn't really an issue. I like the 2.6 tyres. Never been a big fan of the big fat 2.8s, but these tyres, 2.6, 27.5, seemed to get pretty good traction and seemed fairly precise and rolled very well, so I like that. If I had a choice, to be honest, I think I'd probably still rather have a 29 rather than a 27.5, but anyway, it worked fine. The Magura brakes, they work pretty well. I guess a bit more stopping required for an e-bike, but yeah, can't complain about those. The bike handled very well on the tight, twisty stuff. and actually popping over routes and getting up hills becomes quite a bit more fun on the e-bike, I think. The fork and shock work fine. I think if I bought this bike, I would buy the next model up, which is the one that comes with the Fox 36s and the Fox shock at the back, but certainly these ones seem to work just fine.
Must admit, I do like the Shimano motor. The power output is really good. You can slow right up and then put the power on and away you go. No sudden surges of power, comes on nice and smooth. Got a little log here, bit of power, over you go. Up some roots. Very good. That's right, I've got only one bar left with a red light flashing. Well, not flashing, but red light anyway. So that's not a good thing. If you know Rotorua, I've ridden up Paddy's Trail, Tickler, Direct Road, Frontal Lobotomy, done Te Hauto Ariki, and now starting at the top of Kung Fu Walrus. And basically I've used nearly all the battery, and I'm going to try and drop it down to Eco from Trail. I haven't even used Boost. So a 375 watt battery hour is not going to be enough for anyone other than very short rides, I'm afraid. So anyway, we've learnt something. If we can get back to the car park, we'll strap on the big ugly battery and see if we can do a bit more. Okay, so we're going down Kung Fu Walrus now. I've turned the power down to Eco because we've still got a fair way to get home. And I really don't want to ride this thing with no battery. It's funny when you get used to something having power. Eco seems really good until you've been on trail, and then suddenly it feels kind of sluggish. I never even got to try Boost on this thing. Oops. Could have done that better. I guess if I try not to pedal and keep my momentum up, I won't use any battery. But that's one thing that I do find frustrating about e-bikes, is often the ones I've ridden, I've got battery stress, worrying that I'm not going to get home because the battery's not going to get me. And that's something you don't normally get on a normal bike other than mechanicals. Once you actually pick up momentum on these things, they feel very similar to a normal bike. In fact, they tend to be fairly stable, other than when I nearly fall off.
So managed to get back, even though we only had one bar left. Had it on Eco all the way back. Strava says we did 25 k's and 700 meters of climbing, so not as bad as I thought, actually. I guess you could consider that a reasonable circuit, but you still got the stress of, well, am I going to get back without making it flat? And I had to, you know, cruise back, and I had to cut the ride short. So, but still 25 k's, 700 meters of climbing, not a bad effort. We put the old big battery on now. It looks a bit like the ugly sister, I must say, but anyway, let's go and see what she's like with another 2.5 kilos strapped to the frame. Alright, so we're off now with an extra 2.5 kilos strapped onto the frame. Surprisingly enough, it isn't that noticeable. The bike, especially when you're at speed, you don't really notice the extra weight. Maybe at slow speed, popping over something, it may feel slightly heavier. If you strap 2.5 kilos to your normal bike, I think you would notice, but on this bike, not so much. I was hoping to get this bike and ride it 90% of the time without the extra battery. However, I think you would need the extra battery, as the internal one just isn't big enough. If it had a 500 watt hour battery and you could strap another 375, I think that would be seriously cool. But unfortunately, I think it's really ugly with the big plastic battery strapped to the frame. Now, came up to this corner. Trust me, it actually is slightly harder than it looks. There's a sharp corner, slippery roots, bit of a step up, and I was determined to get up it. It's all very well to have lots of power on a bike, but you still need traction and control. And I think part of the fun of having an e-bike is actually mastering uphills that you would normally give up and just walk on a normal bike.
Just trying out boost mode. For me, I've done this on a normal bike and it's a walk up, but quite a cool ride up on this bike.
Alright, so we're into a track called K2. For those not familiar with Rotorua, this is a grade 5 or a black trail, steep and techy, and to add to the mix, it's wet today, but to be honest, I felt just as confident on this bike as I would on my normal bike. I was no slower, no faster. The weight of the bike actually seemed to generate quite nice momentum. Obviously you had to take that into account when bringing the thing to a halt, but the brakes seemed to work pretty well. So I guess the question is, would I recommend this bike? And number two, did I buy this bike? In terms of would I recommend it? Yes, I think I would. I think it's a pretty cool bike. Did I buy it? No, I didn't. What are the reasons why I didn't buy it? Well, one, I thought the extra battery is rather ugly and old-fashioned looking, and I figured I would probably need it. Two, I did actually do some pricing, and they are actually very competitively priced, but the next model up, there is none available in large, so that was another reason. And the final reason coming up is that I go down this bit of a hill here towards the home, a bit of a drop to flat, and next thing I know, the derailleur is wrapped around the spokes. The derailleur is actually broken in half. One of the spokes has been ripped out of the rim, which has damaged the rim, probably beyond repair. And so, yeah, that's not a good thing. The drivetrain on this bike didn't come as standard. I don't know if it was the drivetrain at fault, the bike design at fault, but it still made me nervous that I would buy this bike and the same thing could happen again. So for that reason, I didn't buy it, but I wouldn't necessarily let that put you off buying one. I'm pretty good at wrecking things, and it may be just the way it goes.
Well, that wasn't the best way to finish the day. Went off a small drop, landed to flat, and the derailleur must have hooked into the spokes and broke clean off. We'll take it back to the shop and see what they have to say. Anyway, if you hope the review was helpful, I think it is a pretty good bike despite this happening. If you like the videos, would love it if you subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.